Hi all. It's been a week that we shared a recorded video. So in today's video, we are going to share or discuss about client-server network. So in this video, we'll be covering about the topics like what is a client and what you mean by a server and what are the components of client-server network and what are the threats that are commonly affecting a client-server network. So we'll see all of these in detail in the coming slides, and before that I would like to give an introduction on what a client-server communication or network means. So client server model or an architecture simply means how a server provides resources and services to one or more client. So simply in a web is something which is allowing you to transfer documents and share resources over a network, that is say from one computer to another. So what kind of documents are shared in a web? Usually it will be documents like images, videos or any other text documents like that. So when a web is or a web service is allowing you to communicate between the computers through a network, that particular model is basically known as client server model. So that is why it is said that a server which will provide resources and services to one or more clients. So what are these clients? What do you mean by clients? So client is a program which is basically running on a local machine requesting service from the server. So some device or a machine that requests a service or a resource from a centralized computer which is known as a server is known as a client. Okay, so for example, you can how can you describe client is that some of the devices which you can say as client is your laptops, your desktops or your tablets or your smartphones from which you are requesting information or resource from a central server. So basically client means a device which is requesting resources from a server. Those devices may be your laptops, desktops or maybe your tablets or maybe your smartphones even. Okay, so first in client server model, client means a device. Okay, then what is a server? What do you mean by a server? Server is the computer that facilitates sharing of data, software and hardware resources on the network. So when you're requesting for a resource and when your request is reaching a server, the computer which facilitates the sharing of that data is known as a server. So this is always has a centralized access and it always has a centralized control in a client server model. So whichever computer is giving you the resources what you're requesting for, that computers or that particular region or that particular system is known as a server. Okay, so server is a program running on remote machine providing service to the clients. You can see a picture of a server. This is a server of Dell company from which you can access informations what you're requesting for. So this is how a server is. It requires a more space, it requires more energy, it produces more heat and it requires a lot of cost and space also. It's very large also. Okay, so when it starts, it opens a door for incoming requests for a client, but it never initiates the service until it is requested to do so. So one particular thing about this server is that it will not initiate the like the resources will not be sent to you without request. You cannot say that. It will always send the things which you are requested for, but it will never initiate a service until you are requesting for it. You understand that? Only when you request something, the server will give you the information. Until you are not requesting anything, then the server is also not going to give you or provide you any services. So that's one thing or the main functionality of a server. I hope that's clear. So a client server model is a combination of both this client and a server, and how these two communicate over a network. Okay. So this is a basic model of a client server network. That is, the client machine can be a laptop or a mobile or a desktop, and all these things will be connected to one particular server over a network. Only when you have a network connection this happens, or if you have like network is something like whether it is wired or not wired is not an issue. Only when you have a network connection you can connect your system or your gadgets to the server. Okay, so this is a basic model of a client server network. Now, we saw what is a client and what is a server and how is the model working on a whole. So nowadays there are so many security threats that are affecting any type of model. You might have heard about the peer-to-peer model, which is used in small businesses where you can connect to from one computer to another computer alone, not requiring like a client and server is not required there. The same thing is happening in client server models. But apart from all these kind of models, there are so many security threats that are affecting your networks or your system. Okay, so what is basically a security threat? What do you mean by a security threat? Security threat is a circumstance or a condition or an event that causes loss or harm to the data or network resources. Okay, so in any condition, if you are in a place to lose your data or lose your resources which you are requesting over a network, then that particular circumstance or condition is known as a security threat. Okay, there are various types of security threats available. We'll see them in the coming slides. Okay, this loss, what is occurring due to a security threat, can be in form of destruction. Maybe it can destroy the data completely, or disclosure and modification of data. Maybe they will modify the data or the data packets which you are requesting for, or it may be denial of services, or maybe fraud or wastage of the services what you're requesting for. So all the organizations and business should be very aware of all the security threats that can happen and should secure their data and information from all these kinds of threats. Okay, and these organizations can do this by several solutions are there to avoid the security threats. Some of the solutions are like you can ask for the identification or authentication of the users while logging into a network, or maybe you can encrypt all the traffic that is entering a particular network. You had already seen this about how you can block the threats by firewalls and all those things in the last video, isn't it? So by usage of all such things, you can secure the data and information of your organization, so and avoid the security threat to the organizations. Okay, now we are in dealing with the client server network. So when talking about the security threat that is affecting a client server model, we can differentiate these threats or security threats into two major categories. Let's see them. What are they? So client server security can be divided into two major categories. Like you can divide it separately: threat to clients and threat to server. So there are so many threats that is affecting only the client machines or devices. There are so many things which will affect to the server alone. So let us see one by one. So the threat to the client. What do you mean by threat to the client? So client threats mostly arise from malicious data or code. Malicious code refers to viruses, worms, Trojan horses, and deviant. Okay, so whatever a malicious code or data is affecting your computer or your system or your device which you are using, that type of malicious data or code is basically or commonly called as a client threat. Okay, so some of the commonly used or seen malicious data are viruses, worms, Trojan horses, and deviant. Let's see the first one is virus. So virus is basically a program or a piece of code that is loaded onto your computer without your knowledge and runs against your wishes. So if when your computer is affected by a virus, it will be unknowingly affecting your computer, that is from any source, from network it can affect your computer directly. And what happens when a virus attacks your computer is that it will go against your wishes. It will do things which you're not requesting for, and it will damage the data. Maybe your hardware and software or applications will be damaged. So virus is something which can self-replicate, so it's very harmful to a computer. And that is why we always request us, the computers always request us to have a virus scanner or an antivirus software installed in the computer to avoid such threat. Okay, so basic threat to the client is a virus. The second one is Trojan horse. Okay, so program that performs a desired task but also performs unexpected functions. So this is also a malicious software which can be inserted into your computer. It can perform so many tasks, like it can destroy your computer data, or it can change the modify the data which is already there, or it can also transmit the data from your computer to another computer without your knowledge. So it can also do some unexpected functions or damages to your computers, like virus. And Trojan horse is also very harmful to the computers. Okay, and the third one is worm. So this is a self-replicating program that is self-continued and does not need any host program to execute. So once it is inserted into your computer system, it will self-replicate and will move on and do its own activities, and it doesn't need any host computer to perform or execute its actions. So client must scan for malicious data and executable program fragment that are transferred from the server to the client. So whenever you are downloading something, or when you're downloading an application, it's always better to scan your computers, or like you can scan and you can see whether there is any threat to your computers, and if there is anything like that, it's always better to avoid such things. So it is very harmful to your computer as well. So those three were some of the important threats that often happen to a client device. So let us see some of the threats which are most common in the servers. So first one is unauthorized eavesdropping. Second one is denial of services. Third one is modification of incoming data packets. So let us see them one by one. Unauthorized eavesdropping, it means watching a data information as it travels through an internet. So what happens is, when you're requesting for some data, that you are a client computer and you're requesting for a data or a resource from a server. So what happened, the server receives the request, access the request and perform the task, and it will send the requested resource to your client computer again. So what happened, this is happening between a computer and a server through a network. So when you are in a threat of unauthorized eavesdropping, any hacker can stop in between. The data transfer can be stopped in between, and can look into your information, or can make use of your username and password encryptions, and everything can be seen by an outsider. So through a network, when the data are passing from a server to a client, any person or a hacker can block the network and get into your information. So this is one of the commonly seen threat to the server, and hackers are the people who mostly do this. Okay, and that's the first thing. And second one, a denial of service. So denial of service attack is an effort to make one or more computer system unavailable. So when so many computers are requesting, or so many computers are performing a particular task, and when the server is denying its service, then some of the computers will become unavailable. So that is typically targeted at web servers. So when you're requesting something over a web and web servers are giving you that information, sometimes you can see denial of services, and most commonly used denial of services can be done through service overloading or message overloading. So what is service overloading? Servers are vulnerable to service overloading because DOS will occur due to overloading of the server. So for example, if you think you're going to apply for a common test all over India, we often see the website is being busy because it's getting a lot of requests and the service is getting overloaded. Or sometime when you are looking for the results in your university website, sometimes you will not get the results very fast because the server is getting overloaded by the request that is sent from so many people at a time. So that is one commonly seen denial of services, and that is service overloading. And the second one is message overloading. So people can create this message overloading by sending large data like large messages, large file to the server, and every few seconds if a person keep on sending the message with large file, the server will find it difficult to read the message and access the file and give the requested resources. So the message box in the server will get overloaded and it will occupy the whole disk of the server, and sometime it will lead to the disk crash also. So when you're requesting so many things at one time, the server will get confused and overloaded, and that point of time the denial of services will happen to the client computers. So these are some of the threats that are affecting your computer. And last one is packet modification. So it is nothing but if you are requesting for a data packet over a server, over a network from a server, sometimes a third party can modify the data, like the content of your information, or maybe the IP address can be changed. So many things can be done by a hacker. So it is also one type of threat which is happening over a client server network. So apart from all these threats and things about the client server model, let us also talk about some of the advantages and see some of the disadvantages of a client server architecture. So as I told you, a main and important advantage of having a client server network is that it always has a centralized control. So on it, the servers will always be in a centralized place. Like you saw in the picture, the server of Dell is situated in a particular building, so it has a centralized access and control, and only the administrators can have access to the server, so the data and everything will be securely stored in that particular place. And also it support more users and difficult to achieve with peer-to-peer network. So peer-to-peer network is something which will enable you to have a one-to-one connection, but in case of client server you can have one-to-many connections, and that is why you can support more users. And as I told you, there are some disadvantages, like it uses more space and it has to use so much of cost for installations. And also if there is any complaint occurring or any fault in the servers, you should have an expert to configure or expert to repair it and everything. When there is a system failure, the whole server is down and everything takes much time. So all these things are some important informations about a client server network, and I hope you all understood what a client and what a server and how it works and how the data are flowed and what are the threats happening to a client server network. And with that, the video is all about it, and thank you.